Amplified podcast. As always, my name is Jac Carnett. I am your host, and the background for me looks completely different today. So if you've watched online or listened before, up until now, for the last number of months, as we've been going through Genesis and Exodus, we have been filming in Muskogee, Oklahoma, where I was a youth pastor for 4 years at a wonderful church called New Hope Assembly on the south side of town. And as of a month ago, I became the senior pastor of South Shore Christian Assembly in Lake Tahoe, California. And so in the last few weeks, that's what I've done. I've moved my wife and I and our dog to California and driven all the 30 hours in the U-Haul and gotten things set up here and started preaching here on Sunday nights. And it's just been a whirlwind. And so if you can see behind me, you can see our whole sanctuary. I'm up in the balcony right now. And I just want to extend an invite to anybody who's ever in Lake Tahoe. You're more than welcome to come join us on Sundays at 5 p.m. We have service, and we'd love to have you come join us. And so it's a huge change for my wife and I, and we recorded several episodes ahead of time because we knew we wouldn't have the time or really the ability to record for the first couple weeks. And then once we got settled and everything, there were a couple parts that I had to buy that my last church provided that I had to buy for myself. And so all of that finally came in and we're able to record. And so as always, you'll be able to find us on Spotify and on YouTube on Monday mornings. And so if you're listening to this, you know that already. And so we're glad to have you here. And so we've been going through Exodus for the last probably 10 episodes now. Yeah, 10 episodes. And now we've just made it to where the 10 Commandments is. And so from now on, from our next two chapters, it's going to talk about lesser laws. And so you have to think about this. You have people that have lived as slaves for at least 250 years. Imagine for as long as America has existed, imagine if everyone here was in slavery at all times. And it was getting worse and worse and worse at all times. So these Hebrew people that have now left, that are God's chosen people, and they have no concept of, even taking care of themselves, of owning their own property, of what it's like to not just be a slave, but now maybe someone owes you a debt and now you have a slave. And there's just, imagine just like, it's almost like Lord of the Flies. Like they have no all set governance already. And so God is coming in and he's showing them, this is how we're going to set up our society. This is how I want the world to be. I want it to be one of no lying and no stealing and no adultery and all these different things. And these laws are going to build on that. And so a lot of these laws, they really don't even apply to us today because we don't have slaves. But at that time, you have to think this wasn't chattel slavery where they were super abused and they were in chains all the time like they were in Egypt. No, this is like, if you owe me for building you a tent, you owe me for this, you don't have the money to pay me. Well, you can be my servant for this amount of time. And so for all intents and purposes, you are their slave for a certain amount of time. But as we're going to see, the Lord's going to put more and more and more restrictions on it to the point where you are going to start to develop compassion for the people around you while also seeing the restrictions where slavery goes from being accepted to being something that's unthinkable today. And so it is the Christian religion, the Judeo-Christian religion, that has liberated Western society from slavery. There's a reason why we don't have slavery in the United States anymore. It's because the gospel went forth and it affected politics. There's a reason why the trade slave routes were abolished, because people came to the knowledge that everyone is worth the same. That's no one should be a slave. And so we have Christianity to thank for that, and we have the Lord of the Bible, the Lord of all gods, the God of all gods, to thank for that. And so, but you have to remember, this is where they are. They're coming out of slaves. They are slaves themselves. Slavery is all they understand. Owning someone, having someone owe you something, owing someone else, that's all they understand. So the Lord's going to start to put restrictions on it to make sure no one is ever kept slave for the rest of their life. No one is ever treated horribly, that property flows down the way it's supposed to, that no one is stolen from, and people are treated the right way. And as the Lord goes on, it's going to go from regulation to restriction to then understanding that this is a human being, to then to the point where in the New Testament, slavery, Paul's pointing out that this is unthinkable, that slave traders are listed with those those are liars and thieves and homosexuals and people who perform idolatrous sacrifices. I mean, it's not good to be a slave trader, but the Lord is meeting them where they are. He's not endorsing it, but he is saying that while this is happening, you're going to treat people with dignity. And so that's what's going on. And then as the story goes on, slavery becomes, unthinkable the way it is today. And so if you could open up your Bible to Exodus 21 and 22, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And at least for this first part, or you can open up your Alabaster Bible. They look like magazines, except it's the Word of God. And so I want to thank Tiffany Scott for giving me so many Alabaster Bibles over the last couple of years, and you're the best. And so someday there'll be a sponsor for this podcast. But as for today, we are coming to you from Lake Tahoe, California, here in the balcony at South Shore Christian Assembly on Glorian Avenue. And we're excited you're here with us. And so, okay, we're going to dive in. This is chapter 21 and chapter 22 of Exodus. This is right after the Ten Commandments. You have to think all of these laws. If you can follow the Ten Commandments, you're going to be good. And Jesus even simplified it more. If you can follow one law, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, you fulfill all of these. And so Jesus, even in saying that, we would never want to be kept as slaves. And so Jesus, with that one statement, is outlawing slavery because we would never want to treat someone else that way. And so the Lord's going to build on it as it goes. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain these. Some of these get a little complicated with the phrasing, but I'm going to do my best to explain it as we're going through. So it says this: now these are the ordinances, the laws, which you shall set before the Israelites. Remember, this is people that have been living as slaves. They didn't have their own law system. They go where they were told to go. They slept when they were told to sleep. And God's trying to create, a functioning society, a functioning people that has laws and has justice within them. So all of this is new information to them. If you purchase a Hebrew servant because of his debt or poverty, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th year he shall be set free as a free man, paying nothing. So this is the idea of the year of Jubilee, which is going to come up quite a bit in Leviticus. So this is the year. Thing changed colors. So this is the year of Jubilee, and it comes every 7 years. And this is when all outstanding debts are forgiven. This is when slaves are set free. And I don't even think this is talking about like you go to an auction and you buy a person. No, this is talking about buying out someone's debt. So if I owe so-and-so for building me a tent and they don't want me around as a servant anymore, or maybe they're leaving or something, but you still want your money back, another rich person can come along, or someone just maybe a little bit wealthier can come and say, okay, well, I'll pay their debt, kind of like I'll pay their mortgage, and then you'll just owe me until the end of the year of Jubilee. And so that's how it works. It's people were still being treated as property in this time, and especially women were still being treated as property. And so, but that's going to change as things move forward, as the Lord passes down more laws and more statutes to the point where that idea is just unthinkable. And even Solomon said later on, the borrower is slave to the lender. And I think it's so ludicrous to have a 50-year mortgage, because you're just enslaving people for 50 years. And that's a whole rant I could go on, but we won't get into that today. So verse 3, if he came to you alone, he shall leave alone. If he came married, then his wife shall leave with him. So if someone came into a debt by themselves, they get to leave as themselves. If they came in while they were already married, you don't get to keep the wife. The wife leaves because she belongs with him. She belongs to him. They belong to each other. If his master gives him a wife and she gives birth to sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall belong to her master, and he shall leave alone. So if the man comes in and by the grace of this master, he gives him a wife, and then they have children together, because it was given, it was that the woman wasn't purchased with a dowry or anything like that. She still belongs to him for whatever reason. This is how it worked at that time. She still belonged to him. And so when the debt was paid off by the man, he didn't get to then take all of that with him, all of his family. The family stayed with the master, but the Lord made a way out of that, or made it so that they can stay together. But if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not leave as a free man. I want to be indebted to this. I want to stay in this household. Then his master shall bring him to God, that is to the judges who act in God's name, and he shall bring him to the door or doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, a strong needle like a nail, and he shall serve him for life. Pierce his ear. And so honestly, I don't understand why the piercing of the ear is necessary. Truly, I don't understand. I know that when the priest is consecrated, that blood from the sacrifice touches the ear, touches the right thumb, and touches the right toe and the right ear as well. And it's about the priest now being obedient to the great master, which is the Lord, and he calls us sons and daughters. But I think it's this idea of like a permanent marker of obedience, that like, you gave me my wife and children, and so I'm indebted to you for the rest of my life. Not because like I'm a slave to you, but like my life as I know it, I owe to you, and so I want to stay with you. And so if a man sells his daughter to be a female servant, she shall not go free after 6 years as male servants do. Again, I don't understand this part as much, but you have to think that women at this time were still being treated as property. But as the scripture moves on, that's going to become unthinkable as it progresses. If she does not please her master who has chosen her for himself as a wife, he shall let her be redeemed by her family, so she can be bought back by the family. And so remember, this is when dowries are moving around. This is when bride prices are going around. And so if someone purchases a wife or pays for a dowry so that a woman can come out of this family and into this family, and I really don't even think it's like a slavery thing. It's like she brought value to this house, and now that she's gone, there's a vacancy, and we need either another person, another daughter, or money to fill that vacancy, whether she was doing laundry, she was helping in the field, she was working a job. I don't know what it was, but that left a vacancy in that family. And so a man could come along and say, I'll give you this much money in exchange for you allowing me to marry your wife. We don't really do that as much today. It's not really a thing in Western society, but I think that's more the idea that's being taught here. And so if I guess things don't work out, and it's not the master, this is not what he thought it was, the family has the ability to then buy back the daughter. And so if her master chooses her as a wife for his son, so this master comes along and he wants this woman as a wife for his daughter, he shall act toward her as if she were legally his daughter. So everything that he was owed to his daughters, now that she's married into the family, she's owed the same thing. There's like a TikTok going around right now of this woman, this genius of a woman going, I heard someone tell me recently that when you marry someone, they become your immediate family. And she said it like that, like that's like this deep insight. No, that's how family works. That's how it all works. It's in asinine that you would think that like it's gone away from that. And so she would be treated as a daughter. She is part of the family. If her master, this is the third, let's deal with women here. If her master marries another wife, he may not reduce her food and her clothing or privileges as a wife. And so this is the Lord saying, like, you know, if you as a man are going to take on more than one wife, which is already against the rules, if you're going to do that, whatever you were owing to your first wife, time, money, energy, privileges, whatever it is, you don't get to now just divide it between them. And now the first wife gets less so that the second wife can have some. No, she's owed everything that she would get as a daughter or as a wife. And so the Lord's just making it difficult for anyone to take on a second wife. And so that's, honestly, I don't know why it doesn't say just don't have two wives, but I think it's because that's already a rule that's supposed to be established all the way back in Genesis, that you should only have one wife, one husband, one wife. But if you are going to do it, you're going to break the law. You don't get to just, divide between, she still is owed everything that she was originally. So for those three things, verse 11, if he does not do these three things for her, then she shall leave for free without payment of money. And so if he doesn't hold up these things, she can walk out at any time. She has that right. Okay, so now this is moving away from ordinances for the people and for servants and slaves and husbands and wives, and now we're getting to personal injuries. Remember, this is at a time where, like, if there was a problem, maybe they would go to their foreman, but I really don't think the Egyptians cared about, what was happening with the Israelites. If one Israelite killed another, I don't think they really cared. I think it was probably more of a property thing, and the other slave, probably had to give up his life because they cost the other master something. And so the Lord's now trying to pass down, this is how you behave as a people. Now that you're your own people, you have autonomy, you have your own property, you are your own person, this is how you're going to behave. It's kind of like saying, you're my children now, I've adopted you into this house, that's great, but you don't get to live the way that you were out there. We have rules in this house, and I think that's what the Lord's trying to get across. Okay, verse 12. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies must be put to death. And so that answers that flat out. Like I think that answers the age-old question of like the death penalty. This is a life for a life. Obviously, we operate under the grace of Christ and forgiveness. And so you don't have to choose that route. But at this time, the Lord was in favor of the death penalty for justice. And so there are consequences for actions, even if there is forgiveness. And so I think that answers that question right there. And so verse 13, however, if he did not lie in wait for him, but God allowed him to fall into his hand, then I will establish for you a place for which he may escape for protection until he's duly tried. And so this is the idea that, if in the first case, this is premeditated, this is first degree murder, you killed somebody, your life is owed because you killed someone. But in the second instance, this is like manslaughter. You accidentally kill someone. The Bible talks about later on, if you're like chopping wood and the axe head flies off as you bring it back or as you bring it down and it strikes and it kills somebody, then you have a city where you can go to as like a city of refuge. And no one is allowed to hunt you down as like a bounty hunter or that family. It's like when you're playing freeze tag and there's a base, you get to go live in base. Now they don't get to come back out. I think that's right. You don't get to come back out and go live with your life with your family. And that's because you should have been more careful. You still hurt somebody. You killed somebody. It wasn't intentional, but there's still consequences. So you got to be careful. So that's God's laying out ordinances for if the worst does happen, this is how you're going to take care of it. But if a man acts intentionally against another, this is premeditated first degree murder, and kills him by design through treachery, you are to take him from my altar to which he may have fled for protection, so that he may be put to death. And so this is where in like the books of the Kings, you see people that know they've done wrong. They run into the temple, the altar of the Lord, and they hold on to it because, again, it's like base. Like you cannot kill someone. Someone shall not be killed or even put to death for a crime rightly. That cannot be done in the temple of the Lord. It's a sacred space. And so this is saying you're going to take that person and take him out and be put to death because you cannot kill someone. And there's no like jailhouse in this. This is punishment. Whoever strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death. So then this goes back to the fifth commandment. You shall honor your father and mother. This is part of, there are a lot of moms and dads out there that plain and simple are not good parents. Maybe they're torn up in alcoholism. Maybe they're abusive. Maybe this is happening. And unless it's for like personal protection, the Lord is saying you can't get mad at your parents and strike them. They're still your parents. And so there has to be consequences for actions. But all of these, a lot of them you're going to hear, especially ones with Sabbath, like small things like this person shall be put to death. If they do this, they shall be put to death. I want you to know that, like, as we're going along, this is as much to show the severity as it is punishment. And so I was listening to Dennis Prager talk, and he's been a Jew all of his life. And he talks about how there's no record, even all the way back to this time, of someone being put to death for something as small as striking his father and mother. This is to show the severity that's as serious as I take murder, the Lord is saying, that's how serious I take honoring your parents. That's how serious I take not striking your mother or your father. And so the Lord is showing that the importance of these laws. So, and then number 16, whoever kidnaps a man, whether he sells him or is found with him in his possession, shall be put to death. So again, the Lord's adding restrictions, like you don't get to just go grab somebody from another nation and make them your slave now. You're not allowed to do that. And so that's why I think a lot of these ordinances are the first. This has to do with debts. This does not have to do with chattel slavery. This does not have to do with kidnapping against someone's will. This is debts that are being paid out through servanthood, through serving a master. And so the Lord's making it so that, like, he's going to make it hard for you to hold on to your slave. He's going to make it hard for, there's going to be a law in Deuteronomy that says if someone escapes slavery, maybe they're being mistreated, you're not supposed to take them back to that point. You're not allowed to just kidnap people and make them your slaves. So the Lord's going to whittle it down and make it so that in very, very, very specific instances can you have servants, and even then it's not for life. Whoever curses his father or his mother and treats him contemptuously shall be put to death. And so this is how serious the Lord is taking honoring your father and mother, not stealing, not kidnapping. This is big deal. It's as serious as premeditated murder. If men quarrel, if so, two guys get in a fight, one strikes another with a stone or his fist, and he doesn't die. So guy number 2 gets injured, but he's confined to his bed. If he gets up and walking around leaning on his cane, the one who struck him shall be left physically unpunished. So two guys get in a fight. You're not going to beat the crap out of the other guy because he landed a good punch. Listen, as long as he didn't die, what's owed is this. He must only pay for his loss of time at work and the cost of his treatment until he's thoroughly healed. So think about it like this. Two guys get in a bar fight. One of them gets a good lick in, hits him real hard. He hits the ground, fight's over. Second guy didn't die, but he had to miss work. He had to go to the hospital to get bandages or stitches or whatever. The law is making it so that, listen, guys are going to get in fights. And so you're not going to punish every single person that gets in a fight for whatever reason, because a lot of times both of them are at fault and they probably deserved it. But you are going to pay for the time missed. You are going to pay for, what it took to heal that person, because there has to be consequences for actions. So the Lord's going to make it difficult to even, get in quarrels with one another. If a man strikes his male or female servant with a staff and the servant dies at his hand, he must be punished. Listen, you can't just treat people however you wanted. You were treated that way in Egypt. You're not going to treat each other that way now. You're not going to strike each other. You're not going to lay your hands on your servants. They're there to serve you and pay off their debt, and that is all. If, however, the servant survives for a day or two, the offender shall not be punished, for the injured servant is his own property. And so the Lord's making it difficult. You cannot kill someone. And it says here that the offender shall not be punished, for the injured servant is his own property. And so as it goes on, the Lord's going to whittle down what you can do to the point where there should not be any of this going on. And so the Lord is saying, if this does happen, these are the rules that you're going to make for it. If, however, the servant survives for a day or two, the offender shall not be punished, for the injured servant is his own property. If men fight with each other, and okay, this is a very specific one. So some of these feel like this was a specific time that happened, and Moses stood up and said, you know what, from now on, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. If men fight with each other and injure a pregnant woman so that she gives prematurely. So if somehow two guys are in a fight and one of them throws the other one up down to the ground. And as he's falling to the ground, he lands on top of a woman who's pregnant. And the baby then, it throws her into labor, but there is no further injury. After that, the one who hurt her must be punished with a fine paid to the woman. So this is a protection for pregnant women, that you can't just recklessly act and not expect to have to, pay for what you've done. Let me read the end of that. It's paid to the woman who gave birth prematurely, to her husband, as much as the judges decide. But if there is any further injury, and then you shall require as a penalty a life for a life. So if you get in a fight, you're reckless, you're drunk, you accidentally hurt a pregnant woman and she miscarries or something like that, guess what? That was a life. You cost a life, so now your life shall be paid for it. A life for a life. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for foot, a burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. So a lot of this is going into they are not ready to be told, if someone strikes you, turn the other cheek. This is not a group of people that even has a concept for forgiveness. To think they've been in chattel slavery for 250 years. This is all they know. But later on, Jesus is going to say, you've heard eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But I say, if someone strikes you, show them the other cheek. Have grace, have mercy, forgive people. This isn't saying that you should go around taking abuse all the time, but there is forgiveness. And it's your mercy to this other person. Jesus, the Lord, didn't punish us as we were meant to. And it's that grace, that mercy that draws us to repentance. But if a man hits the eye of his male servant or female servant and it is destroyed, let the servant go free because of the loss of his eye. It's not his fault that happened. He wouldn't have been there had he not been your servant. And so if he loses an eye in the process, then you know what? That's good enough. You get to go free. If he knocks out the tooth of his male or female servant, you must let the servant go free because of the loss of the tooth. Teeth don't grow on trees. And so, if you lose something because you're someone's servant, then the master should have been protecting you better. And so that's the end of your debt. If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox must be stoned and its meat shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be cleared of responsibility. So you can't control your animals all the time. You should have been controlling them. So you're not going to get payment back for them. But, an animal that does something as cruel as killing a person's life is worth more than an animal's life. Then we're not even going to eat that thing because it's unclean now. It's unclean. But think about this. So that's in the first case. Verse 29, but if the ox has tried to gore someone on a previous occasion and its owner has been warned, hey, your bull out there, he's kind of a menace and he tried to hurt my servant the other day. You need to do something about it. But has not kept it confined and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned and its owner shall be put to death as well. Which means, guys, there are consequences for actions. You were told to make sure that your ox doesn't do anything like this. You were warned that this kind of thing was happening and you let this happen. And so your life is owed for that person's life. If a ransom is demanded of him in return for his life, he shall give whatever is demanded of the redemption for his life. So in some cases, if the person, the judges make up their mind that we're not going to demand his life, but you are going to pay an enormous restitution, then that's what you got to pay. If the ox has gored another's son or daughter, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If the ox has gored another's son or daughter. I don't really know what that's saying, but you should probably just go back to the first two if this happens to you. If the ox gores a male or female servant, the owner shall give the servant's master 30 shekels of silver, the purchase price for a slave, and the ox shall be stoned. And so, again, if you are a servant, you're treated on a different level. But again, this is giving preliminary and first day rules to people that have never lived under a law like this before. And eventually it's going to be much different when Jesus comes along. And by the time Paul is writing, he's saying, we're all the same. Even today, Greek, Jew, slave, free, man and woman, we're all seen the same by Christ. If a man leaves a pit open or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restitution. He shall give money to the animal's owner, but the dead animal shall be his. And so, listen, you can't just be out here digging holes and letting people and letting oxes and letting people's family heirlooms fall down in there, okay? You got to cover that up, all right? So cover it up. If one man's ox, apparently there was just a lot going on with these oxen, that they're just like, these oxen are menaces, they are clumsy, and they are a real problem. We got to have some rules around here. So if one man's ox injures another ox so that it dies, then they shall sell the living ox that's left and divide the proceeds equally. So if your ox kills my ox, guess what? Yours is going to the sale barn, and then we're going to split the money. Or if it is known that the ox was previously in the habit of goring and its owner has not kept it confined and made, he must make restitution, ox for ox, and the dead animal shall be his. Like, listen, I warned you last week that your ox was trying to attack my ox, and finally he attacked him today. Guess what? You're going to pay the entire price for my ox, and I still get to keep the one that died. So there has to be consequences for actions. That's what the Lord's building on here. Okay, now we're going to go into property rights, and this is all about, giving dignity. This is about giving rules for people that have never really had rules before. So, chapter 22. If a man steals an ox, or sheep and kills or sells it, he shall make restitution of 5 oxen for an ox, or 4 sheep for a sheep. So think about this. I really don't think the Lord is endorsing slavery at all here. But the Lord's saying, if this does happen, if someone is found to be a slave, these are the rules that are going to be played out by it. If a man steals an ox or a sheep, the Lord has already told you should not be stealing. But if it happens, he shall make restitution of 5 oxen or 4 sheep for a sheep. So you're going to give back multiple times what you stole over. If a thief is caught breaking in after dark and is struck by the owner so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. If somebody breaks into your house, you shoot him in the head because they're coming in to steal your things, they're coming in to do worse things than that, and they die, guess what? You defended your home. And that's the Lord's endorsing that. They never should have been breaking into your house in the first place. You defended your household. And so there's no guilt for you. But if the sun is risen, there will be blood guilt for him. The thief, if he lives, must make full restitution. Struck by the owner so he dies. Okay, I'm trying to understand this as well. But if the sun has risen, there will be blood guilt for him. The thief, if he lives, must make full restitution. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold as a slave to make restitution for his theft. And so I think this is saying, listen, if you defended your house in the middle of the night, you did what you had to do in the dark, there's no blood guilt for you. But if it happens during the day, you have more options. And so I think that's what it's saying. But if the sun has risen, there will be blood guilt for him. If a thief is caught breaking in after dark, he is struck by the owner so that he dies. There should be no blood guilt for him. Oh, okay. So this is saying there's no blood guilt on behalf of the thief. There's nothing else owed because they died in the process. The sun has risen, there will be blood guilt for him. The thief, if he lives, must make full restitution. So if the animal that he stole is found alive in his possession, whether it's an ox or donkey, sheep, he shall pay double for it. So you don't just get to give it back. You have to give back twice as much as what you stole. And the Bible says if the enemy steals, he has to give back 7 times what he stole. So if the enemy has ever stolen anything from you, then stand on the word of God and say, in the name of Jesus, enemy, you have to give me back 7 times what you stole. If a man causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed bare, or lets his livestock loose so that it grazes another man's field, he shall make restitution from the best of his own field, from the best of his own vineyard. So we're not just letting stuff go. There are consequences for action. There's forgiveness, yes, always. But there's still consequences for your reckless behavior. If fire breaks out and spreads through the thorn bushes so that the stacked grain or standing grain of the field is consumed, he who started the fire shall make full restitution. You got to pay for what you destroy. If a man gives his neighbor money or other goods to keep for him while he is away, and it's stolen from the neighbor's house, then the thief is caught, he shall pay double for it. So again, if you steal something, you don't just give it back and, we shake hands. No, you have to give back double what you stole because you shouldn't have stolen it to begin with. If the thief is not caught, however, you loan your stuff out to someone because you're going away for a couple of years and they were supposed to take care of it. But a thief comes and steals what they were supposed to be taking care of. If the thief is not caught, the owner of the house shall appear before the judges who act in God's name to determine whether or not he had stolen his neighbor's goods. So listen, if we don't find the guy that stole all of it, we're going to suspect you next. For every offense involving property, whether it concerns ox, donkey, or sheep, or clothing, or any other lost property, which another person identifies as his, the case of both parties shall come before the judge who acts in his name. Whoever the judge is pronounced guilty shall pay double to his neighbor. So you have to think. We talked about it in the last episode that you have Moses. You have Moses who sits as the leader of Israel. You have the leaders of thousands under him. You have the leaders of hundreds under those guys. And then you have the leaders of tens under those guys. And it goes on down the line so that everyone is taken care of. And so I think this is all being written down so that, if guy who is a leader over 100 has a question about, someone stole something, they don't have to go all the way back to Moses every single time. No, this is what happens if you stole. If you stole, then you have to pay back double what you stole, the price of what you stole. And so this is rules for a society. Rules for a society. Verse 10, chapter 22. If a man gives his neighbor a donkey or an ox or a sheep or any other animal to keep for him, and it dies or is injured or is taken away while no one is looking, then an oath before the Lord shall be made by the two of them that he has not taken his neighbor's property, and the owner shall accept his word and not require to make him any restitution. So listen, if something happens, things happen, okay? Other people come, they steal, animals die. If they come before the Lord and say, listen, honestly, I promise you, I did not steal it. I'm not at fault here. Then it's forgiven. Things happen, okay? Things happen. But if it is actually stolen from him when in his care, he shall make restitution to its owner. So listen, you were supposed to take care of this and you didn't do a good enough job. So listen, you have to pay back restitution. An oath before the Lord shall be made to him so that he has not taken his neighbor's property. If the owner shall accept his word, he's not require him to make restitution. Show his word. And the owner of it shall accept the word, not require. Owner actually stolen from him. Yeah. Okay. I think that makes sense. If it is torn to pieces by some predator or by accident, let him bring the mangled carcass as evidence. He shall make restitution for what was torn to pieces. So again, wild animals come, things happen. If a man borrows an animal from his neighbor and it gets injured or dies while its owner is not with it, the borrower shall make full restitution. So you got to take care of other people's stuff. But if the owner is with it when the damage is done, the borrower shall not make restitution. If it was hired, the damage is included in the price of its fee. So this is getting all the way down into nitty gritty of this is how you have a society. If a man seduces, okay, this is getting into marital things, okay? And this is more serious laws. And this is how they did things back in the day. They had a bridal price, a dowry, and they had things that, this is how you operate. People get together, it happens, but this is how you're going to handle it. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he must pay a marriage price for her to be his wife. And so, listen, you guys sleep together, or if the worst happens, then listen, you have to get married. If you wanted to be together that much, then you should have thought about the consequences. That this is a lifelong decision to sleep with someone. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the money equivalent to the dowry of virgins. And so, listen, if the father doesn't allow, he doesn't like you, you shouldn't have done this, you did this wrong, the marriage doesn't have to happen, but you still owe the price of a bridal price, even if you're not getting married. You shall not allow a woman who practices sorcery to live. So the Lord takes, divining things and witchcraft very seriously. Whoever lies with an animal must be put to death. This is talking to people who have seen the worst of the worst inside of Egypt. And you're not going to take those practices with you. You're not going to take idolatry. You're not going to take wickedness. You're not going to take witchcraft. You're not going to take bestiality with you. These are things that Israelites are not going to do. He who sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be put under a ban designated for destruction. And so I think that just means like next week when we have time to do this type of thing, guess what? Your life is going to be taken from you. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Now, this is talking about taking care of the people who come into your land that are different from you, but are still living by our laws. And so the Bible's not giving a blank slate that you have to take in every single person, regardless of how they behave. This is saying that if a stranger does come in, they want to be a part of the Israelite community, they want to be grafted in, then they have to be treated with the same respect as someone who has been here all along. You shall not harm or oppress any widow or fatherless child. If you harm or oppress them in any way and they cry at all to me for their help, I will most certainly hear their cry. So you have to think that a father is so important in the home because a father is a defender, a husband is a defender. But if that person's not there because they're an orphan or they're a widow, then the Lord himself is their father. The Lord himself is their husband, and he will defend that person. And my wrath shall be kindled and burned, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows and your children fatherless. And so this is the first time that we're seeing like the Lord really emphasize what's going to happen if you oppress this or you do this specific thing. The Lord takes the oppression of widows and orphans very seriously. This is someone that is has no defense for their own. If you lend money to any one of my people with you who is poor, you shall not act as a creditor to him. You shall not charge him interest. And so you're not going to hound him. You're not going to be a loan shark, and you're not going to charge him interest. If I borrow $100 from you today, you can't charge me $110 a week from now. It's 100 for 100. Still to this day, the Jewish community, they keep the wealth in the family because they're not having to pay outrageous interest to each other all the time because they don't charge each other interest. They build things together and they don't lock each other into crazy interest, crazy mortgage, all this type of stuff. And that's how they build wealth together. It's a good thing. If you ever take your poor neighbor's robe in pledge, you must return it to him before sun sets, for that is his only covering. It is his clothing on his body. And how is he going to sleep? When he cries to me for help, I will hear him, for I'm compassionate and gracious. So God is showing that he is the defender of those who cannot defend themselves, of those who are homeless, of those who are widows, of those who are fatherless. He becomes their defender. You and I, when we accepted Jesus as the Lord of our lives, he is our Father. We are his children. He is now my defender. Shall not curse God, nor curse the ruler of your people, since he administers God's law. You shall not delay the offering from your harvest and your vintage. You shall give, consecrate, and dedicate to me the firstborn of your sons. So for now, until the Levites are established, every firstborn son that comes from a family is given to take care of the Lord. They're given to take care of what will become the tabernacle. And so we'll learn more about that in Exodus 34. But before the Levites become those people, so that not everyone's giving up their firstborn, the firstborn son is given up to serve the house. Like that becomes his job. It doesn't necessarily mean that you never see that son again. It just means that like his primary job is not to be a blacksmith. His primary job is not to be a money lender. His primary job is to serve the house of the Lord. He shall do the same with your oxen and with your sheep. It shall be with its mother for 7 days, and on the 8th day you shall give it as an offering to me. So the Lord's saying, I'm giving you everything that you need. I'm asking for you to trust me, and I'm asking for your hearts. I'm asking for you to show me what's in your hearts. Will you give back to me that which I gave to you? You shall be holy men to me, therefore you shall not eat meat from any animal that's been torn to pieces by its predators in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. So part of that's like, we're not going to eat unsanitary food, but God's going to start to show that his people are set apart. And eventually we all become Levites. We are called a royal priesthood, a holy nation, that we are those who serve God in the temple. And all of us dedicate our lives to the Lord. We all give him the first tenth of what we have, because we are his people. We are his royal priesthood, his holy nation. And I think that's how it works. And so, shall be holy to me, therefore you shall not eat meat from any animal that's been torn to pieces in the field, you shall throw it to the dogs. So the Lord is trying to set up a society. These people have no written law up until now. Moses is being run ragged by answering all of these quarrels and these questions, and he's writing down all these laws. This is how we're going to do things. You're going to set people free after 7 years. You're not going to charge them interest. You're not going to abuse them. You're not going to get away with your crimes. This is how we're going to set up a society, that there's punishment for you being careless. There's punishment for you being a thief. If you're going to break the law, there's consequences for your actions. If you're going to try to kill somebody, your life is going to be taken. Your life is going to be taken from you. If you're breaking into someone's house in the middle of the night, that person has the right to take you out. Listen, there has to be consequences for actions. And so the Lord is building a people group, a society, and societies have laws. We are not going to be anarchy. We are not going to be Lord of the Flies hooligans, okay? And so that's what we're going into. And so the people are, again, going to agree to this here soon in chapter 24. But as for today, that's all I have for you. I'm so glad you tuned in for the Amplified podcast. We're glad to have you with us here in Lake Tahoe, California. We will see you next week.